Hi guys, Losino here, and I want to talk to you about the way I level my classes and jobs, why I do it this way over the other methods, and just the pros and cons of using both sides. Sorry I'm a little bit ill, but I kind of want to get this video out with us coming around to 5.15 soon, hopefully, and relics, hopefully. So, my preferred method is level appropriate dungeons. So if you don't know what that means, it's basically dungeons that you go in, you search for a specific dungeon, and it's the dungeon that you do at your level. So if you're level 45, you do Demos and Darkhold, as is in the footage, because that's the highest level dungeon you can do. If you're, say, 56, you do the level 55 dungeon, because you can't do level 57 just yet, and so on and so forth. Now, I tend to do this one for... there's a few reasons. One, I find there's slightly more XP per clear. It's a little bit more evened out since they removed chain bonus, but it definitely feels like I get more XP when I do dungeons closer to my level than those significantly below it. Also, it helps me learn rotations, because I think one of the biggest problems a lot of people find is if they just do roulettes or they just do... deep dungeons, they'll end up in this, okay, I've played my class at max or level 60/70, oh, I've played my class at level 1 or 2 up to a max of 20. So that massive gap in the middle of about between getting the actual job and being at 60/70, you don't know what, some people don't know what they're doing, and you end up in this situation in dungeons where you do your daily roulette, and all of a sudden, instead of getting the traditional ones, which annoyingly is one of the main reasons I don't do them, is the first 3 dungeons, so Copperbell Mines, Tamatama Decroft, and Sastasha. I think that's how you say it, anyway. But, so let's say, for whatever reason, they end up in the level 55 dungeon, and they're level 70, but they've done nothing but deep dungeons. They jump into that. They're going, well, I can't use these abilities. Now, some classes aren't too bad because they build towards it, so tanks and healers aren't as bad, certain DPS. But I know there's one big one, and particularly Black Mage. If you're used to playing Black Mage at a very low level and a very high level, and you end up somewhere in the middle, you see Black Mages do some weird stuff, especially in something like Sunken Temple, because it's the first one where you have access to a spell that instantly transfers you from Astral Fire to Umbral Ice at max stacks. So you tend to see them a bit more. Well, do you transpose? Do you use freeze? And all that sort of stuff. You then get into Cutter's Cry, and you also have Fire 3, so you're switching both ways, and still you still see it out there. You see them, speeding or slowing down their abilities and not quite sure what they're doing. And that's why I tend to do the appropriate my level. Another reason is gear. One of the biggest problems you'll always see, especially if you tend to hang out on Reddit quite a bit and on the Tales of the Duty Finder subreddit or the various other ones, you'll see these posts with people with really bad gear on in dungeons. It's not such a big deal anymore, especially with the item level thing preventing you from doing it. I mean, I went into a dungeon with a tank in Solomai in eye level 90 armor, but had enough jewelry and a weapon that would boost his item level past that. And he did fine. We did big pulls and we were fine. So it's definitely more of a learning how to play the class than the gear. But one of my biggest problems, like I say, there is, like, you'll get some people who don't bother getting their gear when they've got just enough. You're probably going to see it more in your at 50, at 60, at 70, at 80 dungeons, the max level dungeons for each X pack, just because they're going to be ones where when they were originally released, you had to slowly build up your item level because it just didn't grow as quick as it can if you jump from level 59-ish dungeons, or level 49, so Aurum Vale, and then you jump straight into the Steel Vigil, I think it is, the level 51 dungeon. That drops eye level 120 gear, which is the same level as the Ironworks gear you can spend your Poetics on, so some people don't bother, but at that same point, you can, if you don't do your job quest, which I know some people don't, you can end up with eye level 50 people in there. Apart, well, not anymore, but you could have. So, the reason I tried to stay off roulettes, like you said, is I don't like ending up in content, particularly on certain classes, more so than others, where my rotation is significantly different. For example, Bard I don't mind just because it's basically, do I put my songs on? Do I have to put my songs on or not? And do I have an extra dot? Other than that, you'll be fine. Black Mage, like I've said already, very against putting that in roulette just because I don't like... I mean, I know I'll probably get flamed for this, but I don't have Blizzard 1 on my bar anymore because I have Blizzard 3. And yes, I know it's probably slightly less efficient, but that's the way I play. You know, if it's a significant difference in DPS, I'll see it. But if we're talking 100 or so DPS at that level, it's not. I'm not optimizing as best I can. I always, as a little tangent, I always find it annoying when people say this is the only way to play this class. It's not the only way to play this class. Black Mage, as long as you switch between Umbral Ice and Astral Fire, and during Astral Fire you burn as much MP on fire spells as you can, and during Umbral Ice you make sure your dots are up. I don't care what order you do it in and what spells you do. Yes, it may be slightly more inefficient to do certain spells. You'll never see me cast Fire 3 hardcast at the cost of 4,000 mana, because it's just not... I know that's significant difference in DPS. But when we're talking hundreds and hundreds, I'm not care. But anyway, ignore that. But particularly, as you can see in the footage here, I'm using Scholar. Doing Scholar at low level is just as bad, because all you have is Physic and your Fairy. And if you're at minus level 20, so if you end up in Sastasha or Tamatama, you don't even have any form of AoE healing. And I mean literally none. Because you don't get the AoE regen for your fairies until level 20. Alright, so if anything, Square Enix, can you please make that the level 18 ability just so we can use it in every dungeon for some form of AoE? Because I believe Astro and White Mage both have it as level 50. Not level 50, level 10 or so spells. But either way, they can use it at the very beginning of the dungeon. Or they can use it at any dungeon. Now, the other methods of leveling are your roulettes. Again, like I've just been saying, I don't like them for those reasons. They're very quick for XPs. Pre-level 50, I tend to get a level or two out of... I tend to get 2 or so levels. At post-level 50, I'm looking at about a level per, somewhere in that. It's still quite good XP, all in all. But again, you can end up not being able to gear up just because of how low the dungeon level is, comparatively speaking. That's about it. Also, you can only do those once a day for the actual real XP you're looking for. So if you happen to do it once on one class and then want to use it on another class, or you just want to level up as fast as you can, it's not the best. Fates, I think it's just they're not rewarding enough and there's not a lot of people doing them. Their XP per hour tends to be quite slow due to this. I tend to do them in between fates if I'm... not fates, in between dungeons, as queuing can take a while. So, you know, if you're going to be spending 15-20 minutes in a queue, some people say, oh, go level your crafters or go level your gatherers in that period, and then you're leveling those at the same time. What I tend to do is just do fates on the class I'm leveling at the time. So it'll be go do fates of appropriate level, because yeah, it's like with Havensward, they're like 20,000 XP a fate. Yeah, it's not much, especially for 10 minutes of your time, but you can do 2 of those per dungeon run, and that's a lot of XP that can still end up adding up in the end. I think, but doing fates by themselves tends to not be too bad unless you're farming for something in particular, like relic items and such. But because of the way relics work, they tend to not be worth the XP. They're only there if you want to get your relics. Deep dungeons are probably my least favourite way to level. And this isn't anything on people who do level. I just personally don't like them. I don't like how efficient it is that people say either do 1 to 10 or 51 to 60. I just don't like that. Like, yeah, okay, I'm at level 60, but if you get too used to playing at the level 60 stuff, all of a sudden you might end up in, say, a dungeon that's still highish level, like Demons and Darkhold, but maybe you're used to having Lustrate, X-Cock, various other, you're used to having all these abilities, and then all of a sudden you don't have them, and you're kind of panicking because you don't have the buttons you have. Now, admittedly, this is more for people who can't read a tooltip or just tend to have issues with everything. Not issues, just don't like the way that works. Another problem is it's just so quick in that you can never learn a rotation. I remember doing it as Black Mage, and with the exception of the final boss of the floor, so the level 10, on floor 10, you tend to not need your rotation because everything's dying in 1 or 2 hits. Like, how does a Black Mage learn how to switch between Astral Ice and Astral Fire and Umbral Ice if they're using 2 fire spells and the enemy is dead? By the time they get to the next one, it's either worn off or they're transposed already. That tends to be my biggest problem with them, but they are option. Leave quests. My biggest problem with leave quests is it's very difficult to do them while queuing for dungeons, whether it be your roulette or something else, in that if you accept the queue, you've lost that leave. Whether or not you just reattempt the leave, you still lost that leave allowance. For those who don't know, leaves are effectively repeatable quests that cost you 1 leave allowance, and they'll give you XP and gil. They'll also give you They'll also tend to give you some form of item. That could be potions, gear, venture seals you can get sometimes, items that can only be got from certain ventures, leave quests. But the fact that I can't do them while queuing easily, and the fact that it's like, okay, let's do this now, and they're very small. And one of my biggest annoyances with them is that post level 50, so when you get into Havensward, when you get to Stormblood, when you get into Shadowbringers, you need to have a crafter at that level. You need a level 50 crafter to be able to unlock leaves for that expansion, which isn't too bad if you're someone who's leveled all your crafters and gatherers, or you happen to have a really high crafter for whatever reason. For someone who's just trying to get through to the end game and is of the mindset, I'm going to get all my combat classes up first, which is perfectly fine. I'm not knocking anyone who does that. I tend to end up in some amalgamous ball of, I want to level everything at once, but I can't, obviously. So that tends to be a problem there. But other than that, side quests, they don't tend to recommend, just because even at level appropriate quests, you don't get as much XP as you realise, and sometimes a dungeon queue will be quicker. Again, something like those for in between dungeon queues, as if you've got a long queue ahead of you, perfect idea. But that's enough on that. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to say, I do intend to release a videos on the various jobs in the game, on how they are to level, and by how they are to level I mean how they change as you level them up, not necessarily this tank feels like every other tank to level because it's a tank, healers same, DPS casters, all that. It's that kind of thing. I intend to release those videos once I've capped the job, because obviously I don't want to be sprouting off nonsense about, oh, this is how I imagine it to feel at endgame, and then all of a sudden it's very different and I've got everything wrong. But yeah, if you are interested in that type of video, please leave a comment or a like. Just let me know that's what you like. If there's another type of video you like, at the minute, particularly preferably Final Fantasy related, just because I'm not got the best recording equipment at the minute, so everything's a bit iffy, but I know Final Fantasy record. If there's something you'd like to see, please leave it down in the comments. I'll see what I can do. But thanks for watching. I've been Lost Xeno, and I'll see you later.